Okay, so next we talk about authenticity, because as an actor, you need to be considered authentic when people are watching you. They're like, wow, that was a very authentic moment. But how do you achieve that? Especially if, as a person, you might not be necessarily, it might not be your strong suit. You might not be the world's most authentic person. Not everyone is. Um, and so, you have to figure out how to fake that a little bit. Or figure that out. But then the question is, and this brings up the philosophical question that people often bring up about acting, isn't it basically just lying or lying well? And do you want to be able to lie well? Like, is that a good thing to be able to simulate another human being's life so convincingly that people will pay money to see you do it? That's crazy. It is crazy. It's crazy. It's not crazy. And that it begs a lot of philosophical questions that are very important about deception. And so, yeah, I guess we have to talk about deception a little bit and the fact that acting is lying, yes. And good liars probably make good actors, but good liars are also, sociopaths. The Venn diagram, you know what I mean? So, so we're going to talk about, let's talk about deception a little bit. Is it good or bad? Who knows? I don't know what good or bad is, but I can tell you this. It's all over the animal kingdom. It's everywhere. Like the Orpheus something speculum orchid. It grows its leaves to look like female wasps. So then male wasps are like, "Hey, nice to meet you," and like hang and they're like, "Oh, what do we have here?" And then they fly away and they bring the orchid's pollen elsewhere, and that's all part of the game. You know what I mean? Or Coco, the sign language ape that lived, was he an ape? She? He? I don't have enough information. Remember Coco spoke sign language, it was a not a monkey, it was a giant, the big gorilla. I think it was a gorilla. In any case, let's say Coco is a gorilla. And let's say she was a she. Let's say she had female genitalia, and we'll call her. We'll just assign the pronoun she. Coco, the female gorilla who spoke sign language, once blamed her pet kitten for ripping a sink out of a wall, which was a lie. And suddenly her keepers were like, she's lying. Gorillas know how to lie. Because this kitten did not rip this sink out of this wall. You know what I mean? So it's there, Or there's this really funny meme that I'll put up next to me right here about being at work. I love that meme. So, you have to do it in real life too. Oh, we all do. When you're at work, you have to do that. So, there's deception. And there have been studies that show actually humans lie 200 times in a day. I don't interact with that many people besides my wife and son these days. So that means this is a lot. This is a majority of the talking I do into this camera to you guys, which means I must be lying nonstop through my teeth. According to the statistic, and that 75% of these lies go undetected. So that's good. That's a good thing to know in general, because acting teachers can sometimes establish this like stupid cult of personality thing. I am just some asshole. Always remember that. I'm just some guy, and that is important for your education. You can be like, nah, I picked up some things, but from some guy. That's always important whenever you're taking acting classes. And if you're ever taking an acting class and the acting teacher's like get this sort of cult around them, don't take the class. Don't go to that school, because that's really weird. So they're in it for the wrong reasons. They're taking people's money. People who follow gurus tend to stop booking after a while, and they're like, well, I haven't booked in about 10 years, but I've been taking my class for 15 years, that kind of stuff. So that's important. It seems like I'm free associating here, but it's all of a piece. It's all part of this thing. So anyway, studies have shown this: 200 lies a day, 75% go undetected. 1 in 10 things we say to a spouse is a lie, which is fascinating. Although 1 in 3 things we say to a boyfriend or girlfriend is a lie. So we lie more outside of marriage than we do inside of marriage. So the lies we tell in marriages are less frequent, but they are bigger. They're bigger lies, which is interesting. But we are surrounded by lies. Reality TV is a lie. Oh my God, it's such a lie. I worked on the show Next. I was like a thing. There was on MTV, and I was like, to dating couple had to come, and I was an acting coach, and they were like, oh look, it's an acting coach, and he's going to teach us how to whatever. And then they did the thing where the guy or the woman, the contestant is like next, and he like kicks the contestant off and brings in a new date. This show was evil, just horrible. Why was I doing it? Because I was new to Hollywood, and they did a thing. And then they did the thing afterwards where the ladies had to sassily be like, "He doesn't get to something sexual." You know what I mean? And they were coached to say that. They didn't come up with it on their own. There was a writer who was telling them to say the thing, and then they say the thing. Everything in reality TV is totally fake, and the people who secretly hate each who hate each other don't actually hate each other. They're like high-fiving after the scene. It's all fake. And but then again, so is any news you watch that has commercials is also fake, because they have commercials, they have sponsors, so they can't say everything they would want to say. That's not journalism. The only actual journalism out there is the journalism that doesn't sell commercials at the same time. So that would be, I guess, PBS NewsHour and NPR. Those are your only choices. Reuters, because that's a news service. The Associated Press. Get your news from those 4 places. Everywhere else is trying to sell you something. Let's see. So anyway, all this to say, human beings are wired to believe what they are told. We are wired to believe what we're told. So, and this is for the reasons of when we were cavemen and we were out on the Serengeti or somewhere, and there's a rustling in the grass. If your cave mate is like, that's probably a tiger, you're wired to be like, it's definitely a tiger because you said it's a tiger. And then you both run away. You know what I mean? Even if it wasn't a tiger, even if it was your other cave mate having a poo, doesn't matter, because your brain saved you just now on the off chance it was a tiger. Do you know what I mean? So we are wired to believe things that aren't true because they sound like they're connected to our survival. This is why bullshit conspiracy theories pop up all the time, like QAnon, all that stupid shit, because people want to believe conspiracies because we are wired to. Our brains are built that way. Sad, frustrating, really annoying. Conspiracy theories are ripping our country apart. And I say that to you with the risk that some of you might believe some conspiracy theories. Stop believing conspiracy theories. The moon landing happened. The earth is round. Because come on. 400,000 people would have to all go to their graves not saying the moon landing was fake for it to have been fake. 400,000 people would have had to keep the secret. It's ridiculous. Okay, so deception. That's my thing about deception. And that's what I have for you. The thing about it, though, is that you have to figure out as an actor how to seem innocent of deception. You can't seem like you're lying or you're acting as bad. If you're a bad liar or a bad deceiver, then everyone's like, I don't believe you. It seems fake. And you don't want that. You want it to seem real. And so there's an interesting thing. It's all kind of counterintuitive, the way like guilty versus innocent works. And law enforcement people have all these little checklists when they're interrogating someone. And it is very interesting. And I will read it out to you now because it's useful information and fascinating to listen to. So here are some telltale signs that a person's guilty versus innocent. The guilty retell stories chronologically, and they put way too many details up front before they get to the meat of the story. While the innocent tell stories totally out of order, and they rank the order of how they tell a story by emotional impact. So the thing that affected them most, they'll just talk about first because they're emotionally affected by it, and they're not constructing anything. The innocent, when interrogated, will get progressively angrier and angrier, while the guilty get progressively sadder and sadder and sometimes cry. So that is a known thing, apparently, among interrogators. The guilty cry, the innocent get mad. Let's see. The guilty add a lot of qualifiers like, I swear to God, and things like that. Whereas the innocent just tell you the details because they're just details and they know they're innocent, so they're just giving you details. The guilty, and again, by the way, this is just based on law enforcement. This is what law enforcement says. So there's also, does not take into account different ways in which different types of people tell stories. And in fact, I'm sure it puts certain ways of storytelling at a disadvantage. So like people coming from a different, law enforcement is a massive problem as we are seeing. And so I offer this with that sort of grain of salt, that this is soft science, because this is sort of what scientists and law enforcement have kind of found based on, like, there's no the truth about this. But in any case, this is interesting because it's how they think. The guilty will give very specific denials, and the innocent will give general denials. Like the innocent will be like, I've never stolen anything in my life. And the guilty will be like, I've never stolen a surfboard in my life. You know what I mean? And you're like, So that's the story with that. I think that's pretty interesting. Seeming innocent versus seeming guilty. The innocent are just being human in those situations, and the guilty are creating contrivances. And so, as an actor, you cannot contrive. You have to be human as you can. So back to authenticity. There's a story from the early 1970s. There was a trial of some anti-war activists who broke into a draft board, and they were caught and arrested, and they represented themselves in court. And they wanted to explain why they were doing this about the Vietnam War, and so they asked Howard Zinn, the famous historian, to come and be a character witness for them on the witness stand. Howard Zinn came and spoke eloquently about what the war was actually about. It wasn't about freedom for the American people. It was about tin, rubber, and oil, and creating a strategic position for the United States in Southeast Asia and Indochina. And so and so as he spoke from a historical perspective about what this war actually was, not what the politicians said it was about, but what it was actually about, there was a peal of sobbing from the audience and the spectators, the gallery of the courtroom. A woman in the gallery was sobbing for 2 straight minutes while he was speaking about what the war really was, that it wasn't about all these patriotic things that the politicians said it was. And then she turned out to be the next witness. And it turned out that she was the mother of one of the activists who broke into the draft board. But she was also the mother of a soldier who died in Vietnam. And listening to Howard Zinn made her realize that she had always hoped that her son had died for a good cause. And she realized, listening to him, that the Vietnam War was not a good cause. And she then spoke on the stand about how she had failed her son, and that she and the jury had all failed their children who had gone off to war, whereas the activists who were on trial had answered the real call of duty to save the country from itself and save the country from this ridiculous war. And the jury saw her as being extremely authentic. She had this incredible authentic show of true emotion. And then she spoke very authentically about what she believed. And that, when it comes down to it, is what authenticity, as far as we are concerned as actors, actually is. Authenticity is speaking from what you believe, the way this woman spoke after she was so devastated by what she learned from Howard Zinn. It is speaking from what you believe. Authenticity is not simply having a big cry in front of everybody, which she also did, and that was very authentic too. But authenticity is the truth. It is speaking from what you believe, and the truth is only what we believe it to be. A la, we're wired to believe what we hear, and conspiracy theories and all that. So we have to figure out what we believe and then speak truthfully from it to be authentic. And as actors, we have to figure out what our characters believe and then believe it and then speak truthfully from that. That is the real trick to acting, is believing what your character believes. So we are going to figure out how to do that. And the way we'll do that is if you grab a piece of paper and a pen, first we have to figure out what we believe, and then we figure out what our characters believe, and then we figure out how to believe what our characters believe. That's still coming, partly, that's still coming in the semester. In any case, grab a paper and a pen and make a list of the following values. And we're going to be talking about our values and what we believe in. I'm not going to tell you what to believe in, but I am going to do a little exercise with you that allows you to identify potentially what you might believe in. Okay, list these: loyalty, recognition, prosperity, honesty, justice, sovereignty or free will, virtuosity or excellence, and finally, peace. Now, pause the video, and I want you to, while the video is paused, figure out how you would rank these things. And there can't be any ties, okay? So you have to rank in order what you believe in. What's most important, what's next most important, what's next most important, all the way to least important. This is very hard because you have to be like, wow, about yourself. But I believe you can do it. Okay, hit pause. Great. If you're like me and you do this, you're like, oh, I didn't know that about myself. It is very useful and very interesting. How you rank these values is basically how you walk into a room. It's how you conduct yourself when you're behaving towards other people. So for instance, let's take honesty. Let's say you grew up in a house full of a ton of different siblings, and let's say there was like lots of gossip. It was a huge family and there's lots of gossip, and you kind of never knew what people might be saying behind your back, let's say. Okay, so then you might then develop a need for honesty as being the most important thing to you whenever you go into a room. And so whenever you sense in a room that someone is not saying something, you get it out there, you say it, you blurt it so that everyone has the information, because you're really into protecting other people's right to have all the information so that they can operate, because because you didn't have all the information when you were a kid. Now, this has a downside, which is it all sounds great, except you hurt people's feelings this way, or you out secrets and people are like, ah, you know what I mean? You might be a bit of a bull in a china shop if you do it like this. So if honesty is your most important thing, you can be a bit of a brute, but in your wake, there's a lot of truth and a lot of airing out and off-gassing of grievances, because if you go into a room, no one is going to be able to, hide anything. Everyone has to be very full disclosure around you. That's very admirable. And in fact, honesty is part of these separate into 4 groups, and they're both problematic, because all humans are problematic. So honesty, justice, sovereignty, and virtuosity are all the highest ranking values of the admirable asshole who like hurts feelings but is very noble. And then peace, loyalty, recognition, and prosperity are all the highest ranking values of the unethical friend. People who are very friendly and great hangs and great to be around, but I don't know if you want to, lend them money. You know what I mean? Or something like that. So that is that your choice is like, do I be friendly and unethical, or kind of a hard ass, but I know right from wrong, or whatever. So that's honesty. Or let's take honesty's opposite, peace. Maybe you grew up surrounded by lots of emotional trauma and you are triggered by large shows of emotion. You might rank peace as your most important value. So when you see conflict, you try and get rid of it as quickly as possible, because you want to reserve any hurt feelings and reestablish equilibrium as quickly as possible, by any means necessary. And so you are really into protecting other people's right to a smooth life, which is a very noble cause. And then this is also your compromise. In doing so, you might have to be a little bit dishonest sometimes, maybe even about how you feel. So in order to establish peace, you can't always have honesty. And in order to establish honesty, you can't always have peace. So each of these values represents a cause that you will fight for, and also a compromise you're willing to make. And there's a little diagram here, which I think is kind of interesting. So if your primary value is recognition, you are really into protecting other people's right to have opportunity. But you may be willing to overlook a little bit of hackery. If your primary value is prosperity, you're really into protecting other people's right to thrive financially, but you may be willing to overlook a little scheming, etc. And it's interesting this way. Like everybody has to make a little compromise, but everyone believes in a noble cause, and it's very helpful to know. Oh, I see, because then knowing this about yourself allows you to know it about other people too, and hopefully recognize that all these things are very honestly come by. People usually arrive at these highly ranked values of theirs through childhood trauma of some sort or something they were deprived of. And so you can be like, oh, I see. Well, God bless him. That guy, he just wants everything to be peaceful. He wants everyone to be okay. I know he just lied about how he feels, but he just wants everything to be okay. And there, but for the grace of God, go I. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Something like that. I say that as peace is mine. And oof, that's a prison. You don't want peace to be your top one. Okay, so then you can look at at the way your characters behave and prepare to assume the role of someone who not only thinks the way they do, but believes the way they do. And so then you can also believe that. So you're not always going to line up with this person. You might be an honesty person, but Astrov is a virtuosity maybe person. I don't know. He could be, who knows? I don't know. It's fun. It's fun to figure it out. You have to sort of consider who they are and like when they go into a room, what they're willing to fight for, who they protect and why, and what their flaws are. And you're like, oh, okay. Oh, I see. This guy is really into blank. You know what I mean? And it's neat and it's really fun. So what I'd like you to do is figure out you've already figured out what you believe in just now through writing this down. But I'd like you to figure out the top ranked 3 values, like number 1, 2, and 3 of the character you chose to play in Vanya for this semester. First this, then this, then this. I encourage you to choose these 8 things that I have on the list, and I'm posting the graphics of them here so you can study them. But you can also make up your own primary value if you want as well. They often end in a Y. They're a noun form of a big concept usually. Sovereignty, serendipity, that's really, whatever, I don't know, that wouldn't really work. But in any case, do that and figure out what your character's primary value is. And this is their value system. What they'll fight for, what they'll allow, and how they believe. And then you'll know how to be authentic portraying them.